Welcome back to another episode of Sailboats Restorations. This is actually part 5 of the complete restoration of these Air Jordan 8 Ice Blues. So far, we've prepped the outsoles, prepped the midsoles, prepped the uppers, ordered all the supplies, even got the paint and the dye, which will be coming in real soon. So I figured, since everything is prepped, I might as well go ahead and get the Reglue on. I'm not gonna lie, the Reglue is one of the parts that I've been looking forward to the most, but I've also been the most scared of doing. This right here is pretty much make or break. I've been watching videos for the past several weeks trying to figure out the best way to go ahead and get this done properly, and I think that I got a pretty good idea of the method that I gotta utilize. However, I've never done it before, so results may vary. I'm going to start by gluing the outsoles to the midsole. Based off of several different videos that I watched, the best idea is to then give it about an 8-minute drying time so that the glue is a little bit tacky but not totally sticky. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and reheat the glue and stick the outsole to the midsole. Then I'll prep the midsole and the upper, let the glue cure for a total of 2 hours, and then I'm gonna go ahead and heat that up and get the uppers reattached to the midsole. It's gonna be quite a process, and I'm really interested to see what the results look like. Let's get down to it. Beginning the gluing process, I knew that one of the most important things was to only get glue in the areas that you wanted to get the glue. Otherwise, it could leave nasty marks and potentially cause for adhesion issues. I started off by cutting some masking tape using the outsole on top of the midsole as a liner to try and figure out which parts of the midsole did not need glue. After I cut off the masking tape, I went through and I applied my glue to both the midsole and the outsole. Now what you'll see here is I actually had a substantial amount of trouble because I decided to try and attach the midsole to the outsole after only about 5 or 6 minutes of curing with all of the glue on there. What ended up happening was the glue was very tacky. It adhered the midsole to the outsole immediately upon contact and then caused a bunch of the glue to actually clump up and cause a bunch of areas where I needed to go through and try to scrape off the glue to make it a little bit cleaner for a reapplication. So as you can tell, that was definitely a little bit of a struggle for a minute. I fucked up with the first midsole to outsole application. I ended up touching them together so the epoxy or cement or glue, whatever you want to call it, tacked itself together, and it was definitely not lined up correctly, so I had to pull them apart after heating it up. I'm really worried about what that is going to mean as far as the final product is concerned, but I'm just gonna go ahead, run through and see what I end up getting. Luckily, the second midsole to outsole application hasn't even been started yet, so that one still has a chance at being as clean as possible. We'll find out. We still got a minute or two here until that glue has cured. We'll see what we get in a little bit here. So even though I screwed up with the midsole to outsole application at first, I decided to just go for it and see what happened. I ended up trying to attach the midsole to the outsole again too soon, causing for an immediate tack of the forefoot of the midsole to the forefoot of the outsole. The back end kept flapping over and the heel portion tried to connect itself many times. I had to pull it apart and it made the entire process a lot more time consuming and challenging. As you can see, I had to go through multiple times to reheat the glue, and I had to even try to apply more glue to some of the areas where I did not get a good bond in the first place. The first application of midsole to outsole that I tried with my regluing was a very difficult process and did not turn out too well. Luckily, I was able to learn from my mistakes, so when I was doing the other shoe, it actually turned out quite a bit better. The process was not any easier because I ended up letting the glue cure on that side for just about the same amount of time as the first application that I tried. However, it was a bit easier just because I had gained the knowledge of my first application and I had learned from my mistakes.
Purchase your track today.
All right, I'm not gonna lie, that was fucking hard. However much your restoration artists are giving you work for is not nearly enough. They should be charging you at least twice as much because this shit is difficult. The right outsole and midsole combination, you can see on the lateral side, everything looks pretty clean actually as far as the lines are concerned. I think that I did a halfway decent job with matching everything up. You can see as we get to the medial side on the heel, there's a little bit of a mismatch, but overall it's not too bad. Coming along the medial border, things are still looking halfway decent. You can see a little bit of over gluing here at the bridge, but otherwise looks good. Coming up to the anterior portion on the medial side, little bit of a mismatch right here towards the bridge of the foot, but as we get closer to the front, you can see that everything matches up pretty well. Right here in the toe, little bit of a mismatch, but overall halfway decent. Not too shabby. You can see the lines that I cut were a little bit off as far as the paint in the middle piece here, but the attachments look halfway decent as far as the actual glue is concerned. So now I think that this just needs a little bit of time to set. The right one was the second one that I did. The left one was the first one that I did. And it is a mess. You can see a big space up in the toe there, coming over to the lateral side. Big gaps where these teeth are, hardly even matching up at all. Not looking so great. As we come over to the bridge here, another big mismatch portion. Really not such a good job for the anterior portion of the left lateral side. As we get back to the heel, the line starts to match up a little bit more, but all the way in the back, we start to see a gap. Coming over to the medial border on the heel, again, it's not too far off, but there is a minor gap all the way through. And then we get to the bridge where you can tell that it is basically already separating. And we have a big mismatch as we start to get to the toe on the medial side. Coming up through the toe box on the front medial side there area, it's actually not too bad, but overall, the left side just not looking that great. There's a very solid chance that I may have to redo that, which is a bummer. But you know what? Learn from your mistakes. Next time around, it's gonna come out a lot nicer. I think I might as well just separate the sole while I'm here. Now this was actually one of the most devastating parts of the restoration. When I removed the outsole from the midsole, it actually caused a lot of extra damage to the midsole because of how fresh the glue was. Well, at least that part's done with. Got a lot of prep work to do again. At least I've learned from my mistakes, and hopefully this time will go a lot faster. But goddamn, I got a little bit of work cut out for me. Now going through the prep process for a second time was especially draining. The fresh glue proved to be a lot more challenging to get off, and it took a lot of extra time, a lot of extra elbow grease. Hard lesson learned right there. When you are doing a reglue, do not fuck it up. That entire prep process took me way longer than the first time around because all of the glue was so fresh. It was just a pain in the ass to get it all off, and I ended up damaging the midsole a lot more than it originally was. So a little bit bummed on that, but we got to keep trucking along with this process. And like I said, I have a new method that I'm going to attempt when it comes to the reglue of the outsole to the midsole. So I'm gonna show you real quick. At the front of the midsole here, you can see a ton more pitting than there was before. You can also see multiple spots along the edge here where I pressed too hard with the Dremel and ended up going into the midsole. The painted plastic portion has a lot more damage, and it was even more challenging to try and get all of the glue off around there, so there's still some excess glue. More Dremel damage and pitting. You can see some more Dremel damage along the side right there on the medial heel. So overall, this is just gonna be a little bit more challenging than it was before, but I think that I have a better strategy. So what I'm going to do is actually reglue the front half first. I'm not going to even touch the back half because one of the issues I had on the first reglue was that the back half kept slapping down and it kept hacking itself, which took away from my ability to get a firm seal on the front portion. I'm also going to allow the glue to cure for a longer period of time, so then that way it doesn't tack quite as immediately when I place the two surfaces together and I have just an extra moment to shift them and match up things perfectly. And then lastly, I'm actually going to start my clamp at this section right here where the teeth kind of meet up with the midsole there. And I'm going to match that section first, and then I'm going to try to roll it across and in so it gets a nice secure fit. I think that that's going to work better because that part proved to be the most challenging to line up on the other sneaker, which I did a much better job with. We're gonna go ahead and give that a try and see how it goes and if that is indeed a better process. So the only difference with the prep work right here is I'm only doing the front half of the midsole and outsole. All right, so here we are. I got the front half of the outsole and the midsole cemented up, and now I gotta let that cure. As I mentioned before, I'm gonna let this cure for a little bit longer than I did the initial time where I tried this out. Originally, I had only let them cure for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I tried to attach them and they were tacked together almost immediately upon contact. I'm hoping by letting them dry and cure for a little bit longer, they won't tack quite as quickly, so I'll have a moment to kind of put things into place, although I know that's pretty wishful thinking. I'm gonna let them cure for about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes or so. I'll go ahead, I'll get the front part of the sneaker tacked together, and then I'm going to glue the back half, and I'm going to let that cure probably closer to like 20 minutes because that should be a little bit easier once the front half is all lined up. So hopefully we can make this one look a little bit better than the first attempt where I had to completely separate them. Got about half an hour or 45 minutes. I'm gonna hang out and get some other work done in the meantime. All right, it is the moment of truth. I'm gonna do this one in real time for you so you guys get an idea of either the happiness or frustration and dismay that I go through during this period of time. I'm gonna start off by just doing a quick little line right around the masking tape here. So I wanna peel off the masking tape, but only in the parts that I'm going to be covering right now as far as the midsole and the outsole are concerned. If I don't make a fine little line right now, I am going to peel off some of my glue. And I do not want to do that at all because that would be very, very unfortunate. Put all this time and effort into getting this sole prepped, and if I went and fucked it up now, that would really suck. So we'll peel that away now. Like I said, just try to make a nice little clean line, otherwise you'll see the glue kind of rides up like that. Not a big deal as long as you got your X-Acto with you, but be careful with it. Boom. Nice and clean, just like that. So this is the part that I'm a little bit worried about, putting these two pieces together. Again, I'm gonna try with the teeth first, try to work it around and see what happens. I'm fucking petrified that I'll screw this up like last time, but gotta go for it, right? All right, it's a little bit, I got a little bit more play to it right now because I didn't heat it up and it's cured for longer than last time. So what I'm gonna do is heat it up and clamp it down real good. And like I learned from Riley's restorations, when you're doing the midsole to the upper, you can go in little sections if you've let it cured for a little bit longer, and you just heat up section by section. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna give that method a try right now and just heat up a few sections at a time to try and get a nice even glue here. Looks solid. Feel pretty decent about it so far. Just gotta keep it clamped down, try to let that adhesion build there. It's looking pretty solid. I'm just gonna keep it held down and move up a little bit here. Get that glue nice and warm. Let's get it sticking, baby. Let's get it sticking. So far we're looking okay. I like the way it looks, but who knows? Looks can be deceiving. It's the first time I've ever really done this. Again, trying this new method right now. So interested to see how it works out. Don't want to get things too hot, but at the same time, you want to promote a good adhesion between the surfaces. So you do need some warmth in there to make that shit happen. Missed a little bit up on the toe there, but everything else is looking pretty good. Starting to stick over on the medial side here too now. Not looking like my favorite thing in the world right now, but it's a hell of a lot better than where we were last time. and there's definitely a big improvement. So at this point in time, I've actually made it around the entire front portion. I've encouraged a good seal at most of it, and it's sticking pretty damn good right now. The lines look way better than they did before, and actually even better than they do on the other glue that I did. They're not my favorite in the entire world, but damn, like in comparison, this was a way smoother method. So I think that's one thing that I would definitely recommend to anybody that's beginning with gluing the soles is maybe start with a smaller section first. Don't just do the entire outsole to midsole at first. Start it off just focusing on one part like I did. I just did the back piece, and luckily with these Jordan 8s, there's a pretty large section in the middle there that allows some flexibility, which I understand not all outsoles are going to have, but it actually allowed me quite a bit more wiggle room as far as the work that I was doing, not having to worry about that back portion starting to stick halfway through doing the front portion here. I think this side needs a little bit more of a clamp down. One thing that I can also say is I definitely learned how to better apply my cement. I just found, so I think that the nice thing that I can take from all of this is that I definitely understand better what I can do to promote an improved kind of matchup next time I go for this. So you can see in the front here, this is probably the ugliest area of work where I didn't match up the lines quite completely. I also used the rotary tool a little bit extra on that area, so it was a little bit pitted out as it was. So I don't know that I'll get any better of a connection than what's going on right there. The front portion is popping up, so I can just work on that and Dremel it down to make it a little bit more even, as well as this little lip sticking out over here. Now coming over to the other side where I originally started, this actually looks pretty good, and I'm actually very excited with how well this side turned out. Now it's the side that I started on, so I think that that probably gives it a big advantage. So I think I'll have to remember that as I'm doing the heel here. This is gonna be interesting, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes. This has been quite the process so far. I think I'm gonna try to work out this front edge here a little bit, wear that down, just to get it nice and flush, as well as this edge over here. I'll be dremeling down this front edge, as well as this little side right here where I didn't get everything quite as flush as I wanted. But everything else looks really good, and I'm gonna just let that set and prep the back end so we can get that all glued together. And here again, I'm going through the same process, but now I'm just doing the heel portion of the outsole and the midsole. All right, it's been about another half hour or so. It's time. We gotta re-glue the back end of this Jordan 8. Here we go. All right, tape's off. It's time. Time to make this happen. Get everything set up, get everything ready, and once you make this bond, you can't turn back. Not too shabby here. That is definitely a much cleaner job than what I had originally done, especially on this shoe. Looking better than the other side even, which is good. Not too shabby though. For my very first reglue ever, I'm pretty proud of it. I wish that I could have done a better job, seeing as this is like one of the things that I've wanted to do with this pair of sneakers ever since I got it damn near 2 years ago. But for a first try ever, it's going halfway decently, and I'm definitely not gonna bitch and moan. Next big move that I got, these uppers gotta get glued to the midsole, which seems like it's going to be a task all on its own. This is something that is going to be a lot more risky, because if glue gets on the upper, there's not a lot that you can do, and there's a lot of specific work that needs to be done. There's a lot of lines that I'm working with here. I don't know, it's just gonna be a very time-consuming and demanding project. I finally get to put these things on after that too. Even if they're not fully painted quite yet, I can at least try them on and see how they feel. We'll get into that reglue very soon.